Right, what are constraints? We hear this term a lot in project management. We even see cool triangles, but what are constraints? Right, if we ask most project managers what a constraint is, they will draw you a little triangle like this. And I will make a video about why this is incorrect, but for now we're just going to run with it. And I'll say your constraints are time, cost, and the weird people use quality, which is so wrong it's not funny. Check out the quality versus grade video for that. And correctly, or more correctly, they'll say specifications. So these are constraints. To most projects, yes, they are applicable. To some projects, they're not applicable. You might have no constraint for time, no constraint for cost, no degree of constraint for specifications. So constraints are unique to your project. And the first point is not to throw this away, but to reshape it, to make it suit your project. Think about constraints as being forces or factors that limit your options. So for most projects, yes, we need to get it done by a certain window. And for my project, I'm going to say that's going to be 6 months. And that's a force. The project has to be completed by 6 months, making it a constraint. Costs. I'm going to have $100,000 to complete this by. That's a constraint. Specifications. I've got the aspects that I need to reach. I've got the grade of what I need to achieve. I've got implicit requirements, and that would be my specifications constraints. But are there any other things that may limit your options? Have a think about it. Take a second, press pause. Is there anything that may limit your options on your particular project? Hopefully you pressed yes. I don't know how you press yes, but you pressed yes somehow. And you thought about things like approvals. You thought about things like the weather, if you're an outdoors project, construction, so on. You thought about things such as stakeholders. They might constrain your projects. You thought about things such as resources, both human and physical resources. Are project constraints. You thought about things such as risk, or the perception of risk might be a constraint for your project. Things such as the economic environment, the exchange rates for the dollar, supply and demand curves for your industry, things like consumer behaviour. No one can spell consumer behaviour. Actually, for the Americans, who cares? If you knew how to spell consumer behaviour, you would spell it right. But for me, that's a constraint for this video. Political and legal. So political, changes in government, funding and so on. Legal, whilst we could advocate of running projects of questionable legality, let's say that we've got legal constraints, we've got the law, we've got standards, we've got things that we need to adhere to. Communications are a constraint. Talking to people, having meetings, reporting, these are all a constraint. IT constraints in your project. You might not have the IT capabilities to do things. So many other things. Your organisation itself may be a constraint. Your inherent policies and procedures may limit the options of the project team. Safety is a massive one, and the culture of safety within your organisation may limit your options. So when you think about constraints, go broader than these three. Think about all the things that are going to limit your options, because at some point in your project, these are going to impact on your decision making. Step 1, identify your objectives, and then think about all the things that are going to make this job hard for you. Step 2, with all these forces pushing in, question, is this project still achievable? Can we do this? Can we get all the things we need to achieve within 6 months, within $100,000, specifications, risk, all that sort of stuff? Can we actually do it? I know it's a bleak way to start a project, but it's kind of a useful one, because if you come to the realisation that we can't do this, the constraints are way too strong given what we're trying to achieve, you've got options. Pull the pin, option 1. Increase the constraints. I'm going to talk about constraint elasticity next. Get approval. Cut the scope a little bit. You've got options anyway. Now, with all of your constraints, the basic version was this. The other version is quantify your constraints where possible. So with time, I've put 6 months. And that's great, that's a good starting point with cost, $100,000. But what flexibility do we have with these constraints? And all of your constraints will live on somewhere between 0 and total. And this is a degree of flexibility each constraint will have. And every constraint will be different, every project will be different as well. So, if you're running an event, you can assume that time is going to be fairly inflexible because the event has to occur on a scheduled date. However, cost may have a higher degree of flexibility. If you think about the Olympics, the term crashing a project comes in handy, but if you think about the Olympics, they need to do whatever they can to get it done on time. Time cannot move, so cost takes a hit. So some constraints will be more elastic than others. A good game to play, also a dangerous game, so put your hazard lights on here, is to identify how much room each constraint has. So for time, 0. For cost, what happens if we spend $1 more than that? Does it matter? Well, no. We've got up to $500,000 and the project still represents value. If it goes over $500,000, not much value. So we can start to consider this constraint as being fairly elastic. Specifications. What happens if we need to increase or decrease them? Does the project still give us value? Yes or no? Because this is going to end up helping you shape your project. And if you want a quick and easy version of this, have a look at the triple constraints video and try and at least play that game with your client. Identify what your priority is. Okay. Hopefully that's helped out, and next time you say I've only got 3 constraints in my project, the triple constraints, the iron triangle, whatever cool buzzword you want to use, just take a deeper look. Alright, constraints are anything that are going to limit your options. Alright, well I'm constrained by time and lunch because I'm getting hungry, so I'm going to have to leave this. Thanks guys.